CII's Green Initiatives. Welcome to the enable the enhancement of green features of buildings by bringing in innovative and futuristic technologies. IGBC certified green buildings resulted in a tremendous reduction of energy and water consumption and also provided healthier places for people. CII's IGBC, set up over 2 decades ago, has launched many impactful and innovative initiatives. Today, IGBC has 31 different rating programs, 29 chapters across India, and 6,000 accredited professionals. With the active participation of all stakeholders, today India has achieved a major milestone of 10.22 billion square feet of registered green.
Check, hello, test, hello. Hello, check, mic testing, 1 2 check.
bringing the change in the lives of common people with Kartavya, shattering the darkness of illiteracy with Sakshar, empowering youth and women through employment and entrepreneurship with Kaushal Sambal, grooming the arts and sports talents with Lakshya, promoting social innovations with Mashal, conserving the environment with Sankalp, ensuring community participation in rural development with Sarvodaya, and giving identity to the migrant laborers with I Empower, with the belief of the global family or Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, and Mata Bhumi Putro Aham Prathivya means this earth is my mother and I am its son. This is the dream of Shri Basant Bansal. M3M Foundation, constructing lives, building nation.
For 28 years, the CII Partnership Summit has been driving India's global engagement. In 2023, as CII leads B20 India, the Partnership Summit will converge government and business leaders of the world and India with the theme of partnerships for responsible, accelerated, innovative, sustainable and equitable businesses. The CII Partnership Summit will align with B20 India. Global dialogues are strategized around 10 tracks. Inclusive GVCs for resilient global trade and investment. G20. Financing global recovery. Future of work, skilling and mobility. Energy, climate change and resource efficiency. Financial inclusion. Digital transformation. Technology, innovation and R&D, ESG in business, African economic integration. With country sessions, B2B meetings, state sessions and much more, the CII Partnership Summit 2023 is the world's meeting place this March. Partnerships for responsible, accelerated, innovative, sustainable and equitable businesses. CII's Green Initiatives. Welcome to the world of green buildings. CII's Indian Green Building Council, IGBC, with the support of all stakeholders, launched the country's first IGBC Net Zero Energy Building Rating System in 2018. This enabled the enhancement of green features of buildings by bringing in innovative and futuristic technologies. IGBC certified green buildings resulted in a tremendous reduction of energy and water consumption and also provided healthier places for people. CII's IGBC, set up over 2 decades ago, has launched many impactful and innovative initiatives. Today, IGBC has 31 different rating programs, 29 chapters across India, and 6,000 accredited professionals. With the active participation of all stakeholders, today India has achieved a major milestone of 10.22 billion square feet of registered green building footprint. India has become the second largest country in the world in green built area. From the places we stay, work, study, transit, play and worship. The green building movement is spreading across the country as India is witnessing enormous development over the next 5 decades. Going green and net zero is the only way forward. With the rich experience of over 2 decades, IGBC launched Mission on Net Zero on Earth Day 2021, which is in alignment with the Government of India's commitment of India becoming a net zero carbon emitter by 2070. We invite every citizen of our country to join the green and net zero building movement spearheaded by IGBC and make India the Jagat Guru in sustainability.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to begin our first session at the Partnership Summit 2023. I'd like to request everyone to please settle down before we bring in our speakers for the session. Request you all to take your seats and please settle down. Thank you. You can all join me in welcoming all our speakers for this session as they walk onto the dais. And like I said, for the first session at the Cii Partnership Summit 2023, I'd like to begin by welcoming each one of you who have joined us to be here today. Future of Work, Building Resilient and Sustainable Workforce is the first session. And for this, I'd like to invite Ms. Shobna Kamineni, Chair B20 Task Force on Future of Work, Skilling and Mobility, past President CII, and Executive Vice Chairperson, Apollo Hospitals Enterprise Limited, to set the context and take this session forward. Over to you, Shobna. Yeah. You can start from here.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the first session of the Partnership Summit of the CII. I personally have been attending it for many years now, and at each time I find that it adds great value, not only to each one individually, but to the country at large, and even to a larger international audience. So in this context, for us to line up and be the first session, which is again about the workforce, the global workforce, I think makes it even more important. So I welcome you all here this morning. And on behalf of CII, I extend a warm welcome to all of you. Today's session will be about the future of work, building resilient and sustainable workforces. And with me, I'm privileged to have on the dais a very distinguished panel of speakers. And I extend a welcome to my speakers. We're glad to have Vikramjit Singh Sahani ji. He's a member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, and the founder and chairman of Sun Group and the Sun Foundation with us in this session. Vikramjit Singh ji wears twin hats as a member of Parliament, working for his people through his people through non-profits, and as also an industrialist. Today we have with us Mr. Hakan Cevrel, the State Secretary to the Minister for Foreign Trade, Government of Sweden, here in the panel. He's a diplomat who worked in Taiwan, Singapore, Brunei, and served as the State Secretary at the Ministry of Defense and political advisor to the Swedish Prime Minister. Mr. Victor Thomas, our next speaker, is President and CEO of the Canada-Indian Business Council. Victor's been working tirelessly to strengthen the Canada-India economic corridor by promoting trade and investment. He's also, one of the emerging leaders of Canada and is a recipient of the Canadian Red Cross's highest honor. Miss Edith Nordman is the chairperson, Netherlands-India Chamber of Commerce and Trade, and the managing partner of ACG International. Ms. Nordman has been working towards broadening and strengthening business and economic relations between the Netherlands and India. And the last speaker, Mr. Paul Bradley, is the chairman and CEO of Caprica International. And earlier he expressed how happy he is to be able to visit India after 3 years. So we welcome you here doubly for that also. Mr. Bradley's been involved in international business throughout his career and established new business entities in China, Southeast Asia, India, the Middle East, and the US. So I'm delighted to be here with you at the Partnership Summit. It's a top-level forum, and like I said, it's been organized, we've been having it continuously since 1995 in association with the Government of India. And under this overall theme this year is building the world with partnerships, internationalization, growth, competitiveness, and sustainability. So I think all four are super important pillars for us to be debating on for the next 2 days. And this year's summit aims to capture perspectives of leading experts in this diverse range of discussion tracks. I'd also like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Government of India for assuming the G20 Presidency and honoring CII to be the Secretariat for the B20. And I think it is this ongoing partnership that has led to the confidence for CII to take up this important role as the Secretariat. So coming down to business for today, the future of work is now, and it's impacting every segment of industry. Modern work as we know it is harnessing the power of frontier technologies to reinvent, redesign, create sustainable value chains, which will be further enabled by globalization and digitally equipped workforce. Skill development, social protection, social dialogue, equal opportunity, occupation safety and health, and adequate workforce market regulations. We've heard it so often, these words, and they still remain the essential components of shaping the future of work with sustained and sustainable economic growth and decent work for all. According to the World Economic Forum, though 85 million existing jobs will become obsolete by 2025, a further 97 million jobs are expected to be created through the growth of AI and technology. So the question is, how do we map and leverage the opportunity to ultimately benefit the world? Driving these targeted actions in this space under the B20, there are 7 task forces and 2 action councils, and they've been entrusted to develop a consensus before the actual G20 meets in September. And in CII, I actually lead the task force on future skills and mobility of the work, that future work skilling and mobility. My friend B.V. Mohan Reddy, I think he's somewhere here, is my co-chair, as are 7 co-chairs from across the world, and 8 other international co-chairs. And we have 165 members who continue to deliberate on this, to be able to give a framework of issues of how we can move this agenda forward from the business side to the countries in the G20. But now, coming back to our session today, let's get to the heart of issues. And I'd like first to request our Rajya Sabha member, Shri Vikramjit Singh Sahani, to address this forum. And then we'll have a debate we'll have a conversation with our other panelists here. So thank you all for being here again. And I hope that you have a very productive 1.5 days. Thanks.
Mrs. Shobna Kamenini, Chair, Task Force on Future of Work, Skilling and Mobility under B20. past President CII and Executive Vice Chairperson Apollo Hospitals, Mr. Hakan Jevril, State Secretary to the Minister for Foreign Trade, Government of Sweden, Mr. Victor Thomas, President and CEO, Canada India Business Council, Ms. Edith Nordeman, Chairperson, Netherlands India Chamber of Commerce and Trade, Mr. Paul Bradley, Chairman and CEO, Capricia International, and Dr. Sumitro Chakrabarti, Founder and Director, IPMS. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, a very good afternoon. It is indeed a proud year for India handling the G20 Presidency, and I would like to congratulate CII for being the Secretariat of B20. It's my pleasure to be here at this conference and part of this very critical topic, which is very close to my heart, and address this august gathering and distinguished panelists. As Shobhana ji was saying, that the world have undergone various changes in the past year in terms of social, economic, geopolitical, and technological variables. Powered by technology, globalization, liberalization, we are entering a new era, which will be defined by not just changing the ways of working, but also by how we enable reskilling, upskilling, and ensure mobility for people across the countries to bridge the skill gaps. Before coming to the future of work, I would like to share that as per the latest report by International Labour Organization, in 2023, global employment growth will only be 1%, which is less than half level in 2022. Global unemployment is slated to rise in 2023, and this is definitely a good reason for concern. But in the same report, it is mentioned that global jobs gap stood at 473 million in 2022. It is 33 million increase from 2019. The world is changing at an extremely rapid rate, and so as the skill ecosystem. Skilling that too with an ethnographical approach is the only sustainable solution to survive it. Skills should include roles that are going to support the growth of emerging industries. It is necessary to ensure that the new jobs are mapped to the requisite skills. Given the scope, nature, and demand for such skills, it becomes important to create a cross-border digital skill platform or portal for formal and informal workforces at a global level, and I'm sure CII can play a pivotal role in the same. This would then enable a mapping of these skills onto the current jobs as they exist in the market, thereby creating a pathway to estimate the demand-supply gap in the skills of future. Artificial intelligence is a new phenomena which also need to be considered while forming policy frameworks in this regard. You must have heard about this new AI platform called ChatGPT, where you just have to give instructions and you will get your work done. For example, if you enter, please write an article on economic crisis or whatever, or even today's topic, the computer will come in few seconds with 1,000 words, structured article within seconds with the help of AI. That is the changing paradigm which we are going to witness. The work ecosystem and pedagogy is changing rapidly, and future of work is expected to disrupt the current skill training ecosystems, and we have to be proactive about the same. I believe that we need to align skill training with the future of work and work closely with public-private partnership mode with the industry. We've also found that unemployment is the skill gap between available workforce and skill required by the industry. I think skill mapping at various GIs, as we have geographical tags for the export of products, we should have skill mapping at various geographical locations is the need of the hour to train the youth in those very skills. There is considerable scope for upskilling as we have large, formally untrained, skilled human capital. Like in India, National Skill Development Corporation, where I was board member for several years, have 37 sector-specific skill councils integrated with various industries. India, as a host country of G20, aims at providing skilled labor of almost 100 million in roughly 24 key sectors in years to come, which will provide a robust and coordinated linkage of manpower to the economy. But we face a challenge as unorganized sector constitutes over 90% of the economy. Women also need to have their fair share of participation in the skill ecosystem. Mainstreaming gender roles by skilling women in especially non-traditional roles and increasing gender sensitivity at the workplace will have a catalytic effect on the productivity. Current infrastructure, I feel, is available in the educational institutions is very inadequate considering the huge demand for skilled workforce. Therefore, we must enroll the students even at the higher secondary level, for vocational education and training to prepare them for jobs. Another thing, considering the industry, the apprenticeship for on-the-job training is most critical to prepare the skilled workforce for gainful employment, and you as an industry has the responsibility for the same. At the end, I am humbled to state that our NGO, Sun Foundation, have made a remarkable contribution toward building a resilient, skilled workforce through our many world-class skill centers of excellence, where we provide free of charge skill training and assist them with employment in various disciplines. Our motto is to take students campus to corporate. Last but not least, labor and workforce mobility are a reality of future. Combined with the efforts of G20 and the B20, we need to create and develop strategies also for export of skilled workforce to bridge the gap. For example, we saw a lot of demand for health workers during the pandemic. Thus, the international linkages for mobility are very important. I wish this session on future of work, building resilient and sustainable workforce a great success. And let me also take this opportunity to extend full support, and Ms. Shobhana Kaminini as chairperson. I wish all the delegates a very pleasant and meaningful deliberations. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji, for your address and everything that you do with CII, because you spoke about partnerships also. And we do expect more velocity in terms of job creation. But let's move on to our speakers today. I have the pleasure to invite our first speaker, Mr. Hakan Jebril, and he will please talk to us for 2 to 5 minutes, and then maybe I can ask you a question. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shobhana. Dear friend, distinguished guests, truly a pleasure to be here today to be able to have this wonderful opportunity to discuss topics of the future, which I truly think this is all about. I must say I came in on Saturday, but it's so nice to be here and really get a strong update of the fast-moving India and looking forward to increase the Swedish-India relationship. And how we move forward together is actually key in this perspective. I think we live in very interesting, sometimes scary times. It's the world is not what it looked like just a little bit over a year ago with a terrible Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have the strategic challenges between US and China. We have nationalism pouring in different parts of the world, which are creating some trade barriers. But on the other hand, there are great opportunities to work close with friends, and I feel truly that I'm among friends here today. So we are expecting great changes in our economy, which was also mentioned earlier. The digitalization is overhauling business practices and opening a whole new world of opportunities. And as mentioned here with AI, I think that we're just in the beginning of a shift, and it's very difficult to foresee how this will play out. The green transition is accelerating, whether we like it or not, and the future belongs to the green and the sustainable. Constant innovation is a telltale sign of successful organizations. No matter what the source of change, the workforce is confronted with the need to both adapt to the changes and cultivate new skills necessary for continued advances in digitalization, green transition, or innovation. So let me share some of the reflections from a Swedish perspective. First, I think it's important that we embrace change. To give an example, Sweden is undergoing a green industrialization, which is reinventing many established sectors, like green steel. It's a taste of the industry of tomorrow, which requires organizations to develop resilient workforce, capable of continuously developing new practices and solutions. Of course, organizations that can do so successfully will be well positioned to benefit of the change. Second, developing resilient workforce requires focus on social inclusion, gender equality, and skills. Social inclusion is important because it maximizes the potential of the workforce, as no people are left out. Skilling is important because it gives the workforce greatest chance of success in a market which is increasingly put a premium on innovative and green solutions. These are the building blocks for holistic sustainability within the workforce. Third, we need to be adaptable to new markets and opportunities that develop. The digital economy is an illuminating example of a revolutionary change. We see examples here in India like UPI, which enables more than 2,000 transactions every second. Very impressive. And this is incredible technology, and it requires a workforce which can exploit it and the opportunities it presents. In short, an innovative workforce. As State Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Trade, I also see connections with trade, as through trade, exchange and learning on the workforce happens naturally. This is one of many reasons why Sweden is a strong supporter for a free trade agreement between the EU and India, and free trade in general. Removing barriers to trade would be a game changer for how our companies and our workforces interact with one another. The future of work is an important focus for the Swedish government, of course, and by investing in the building blocks for the economy of the future, promoting skilling and social inclusion, and promoting innovation capability, we hope to develop a key competitive advantage in the economy of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jebel. Once, before the next speaker comes on, just wanted to ask you a question. The future of work is impacting industries across the globe. So what are some of the steps, you did articulate what Sweden does, but could it, how would you work towards, the mapping the upcoming future of job roles and take initiatives to equip your workforce for future skills, actual use cases?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think these are some very important elements. And what we're all trying to look into is to find what are the demands of the future and how to prepare our workforce for that future. And from a Swedish perspective, I think we truly have embraced what is happening in the world now with decarbonization and sustainable business, in conjunction with the importance of being ready for the digital revolution. So in this sense, we need to be well positioned in the future for our economy. And how to move our workforce in this regard is very much so to social inclusion of all layers of the workforce and all levels of society. So this inclusion, I think, is looking into, I mean, it's very easy to say that we need programmers and engineers and so on, and those skills are very much needed, for sure. But we also need to lift other parts of the workforce ready to take on new steps. I mean, working in a factory is not what it used to be 20 years ago, what it is to be today, and the workforce of tomorrow is another different scheme. So we really have to prepare them for that. So it's a whole of society approach to prepare the workforce for the future that I think is very much needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker that I'd like to invite up is Mr. Victor Thomas of the Canadian Indian Business Council.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It's a great privilege to be here. I've always wanted to come to the Cii Partnership Summit. And then there was this COVID thing, and we weren't able to travel. And then I have to say, this is my 6th trip to India in the past 15 months. And we're calling it revenge travel. But it's a great privilege to be here. As you know, Cii is the preeminent business organization, and we do a lot of things together in North America, but there's nothing like being in India and getting to be here. I think as we look back on the history of the world, I think I want to look back at some of the demographics. In 1920, the population of the world was 2 billion. As of November 15th, you all will know the world population hit over 8 billion. But we kind of now assume that population is only going to increase and that we're going to have talent. But in the next 50 years, a lot of forecasts show that population is actually going to decrease. As mentioned, my name is Victor Thomas. I'm with the Canada-India Business Council. We have looking to trade and invest not only with India, but bilaterally. Our companies have put over the last 7 years over $65 billion into this country, and we're looking to do a lot more in the months and years ahead. And of course, when you look at demographics, India is very uniquely placed. I still don't understand how they're calculating it, but April 14th, next month, we're told that India will now surpass that other country and become the most populous nation on earth. 1/6 of humanity will be from this country, a young and dynamic population. There's no question, but the world needs India when it looks at talent, when it looks at how do we skill, how do we look to do things, because we will be looking to India to lead. Canada has 37 million people, pretty much the same population as Assam. And yet it is essentially 3 times the size of India in regards to space. Yet our population is aging and aging quickly. Canada's talking about now bringing in 500,000 immigrants from right around the world. And one of the largest sources of those immigrants are right here from India. India has to be the talent hub for India, of course, but it also has to be the talent hub for the world. Through skilling, friend sharing, outsourcing, migration, the world needs India. As we know, the pace of change is not going to diminish. It's actually quite staggering when you think about it. Let me give you a quick example. In October, I had the privilege of being in San Francisco and got a chance to ride in an autonomous vehicle. not driven in the middle of the night, but driven at peak hours in the afternoon during rush hour. And it was actually ironically in a Jaguar vehicle, and I won't mention the company, but it rhymes with Google. That happens to be the owner. And it's remarkable, the technology now, that you don't have someone actually driving the vehicle, and through AI, you can actually move around and adjust to the heavy traffic and get to places. Robots are getting better and cheaper, and that means they will play a larger role in our lives. Greater automation is needed as populations age around the world and labor shortages become increasingly severe. Again, such a strong part for India to play a huge piece. That's why I think when you look at the attributes of how do we actually skill people, we actually need to go back to thinking originally and creatively. They're so important. Move up the knowledge economy value chain. In summary, change is happening extremely fast around the world, and that's one of the few certainties we can look at. We need to develop more and more of the soft skills around critical thinking and creativity. And thirdly, Canada needs India's talent. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vikram and Victor, and for the number of trips you've been making to India in your revenge travel. But tell me, you come from a country that's preparing, for the future of work, and you're lots of initiatives, some of which you spoke about, that you're preparing your workforce. But can you shed some light on some of the initiatives that you're taking for Canada to map the future of jobs? And what's the direct involvement of industry in doing so? And do you see any connection with India?
Thank you so much. It's fascinating because we look at we actually created something called the Future Skills Center, which I sit on the advisory board of. And so we mapped out a number of years ago all the things that we can foresee, all the research, all the data, and then something like ChatGPT, as the honorable member mentioned earlier, comes about, right? And since this latest version came end of November, and the numbers are staggering. And when you look at how many people are actually using it, they gained 1 million users in its first week after launch. 616 million visits in the last month. So as much as we can plan, as much as we can put all these things in place, we need to understand that the change is so evident, and that the transferability of skills and those soft skills getting built up are going to be utilized in whatever comes out into the future. In regards to Canada and India, I think there's a lot of opportunity. We have now over 230,000 Indian students coming to Canada. And actually what we're looking at is saying, how do we actually create a much greater brain chain between the two countries? When you look at research, when you look at internships, when you look at co-op placements, how do we actually do a lot more given the interactions? And how do we actually get a lot of Canadian students to see and come and understand the largest, fastest growing economy in the world?
Thank you. And I do know that the Canadian universities do have a lot of Indian students, and many families have found great livelihoods in Canada. So our next speaker is Miss Edith Nordman. Would you like to speak from there, please? Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Kameneni. Honorable Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. First of all, a big thank you to CII and my congratulations on everything that they have already done within the G20 and B20 context. I had the privilege to be here 2 weeks ago at the EU-India conclave, where we were also talking about the future of cooperation and everything that we're doing. Back then, I had the privilege to talk about the role of education and what that means to the future of work. I shared with you that within 2050, the EU will lack 50 million people to uphold their workforce and to stay compatible. Today, I want to talk about something else. Let me take you back about roughly 100 years ago. Back then, women were admitted to office work. The reason why men thought that they could be useful was the introduction of the typewriter. As women could handle a sewing machine, men thought they could be trusted with a typewriter. Of course, women were paid far less than men for the same job back then, and they were only allowed to work until they got married. In 1909, in the Netherlands, there were 9,000 female office workers, 1 in 11 of all office staff. For the clerks, the men, this was far too many. They complained that the women undermined the atmosphere and status of their profession, and that it was unfair competition. Trade unions advocated a ban on women in the office. In 1921, PTT, Post Telecom Telegraph, a state-run company, instituted a women's quota. No more than 1 in 5 civil servants could be women, and all managerial top positions had to be free for men. The same year, the banking sector began introducing office machines on a large scale with the explicit aim of eliminating all female staff of the workforce within 5 years. Let's fast forward to today, 2023. Within the development of gender equality in the future of work, there are several important topics, such as the fact that women are still drastically underrepresented in leadership, the fact that women leaders are leaving their companies at higher rates, that they are deeply underestimated in technical roles, and that they want to advance, but still today face stronger headwinds, just to name a few. One of the most important focal points is equal pay. You may think that this is something that goes back 100 years and that only the pay on average is not the same nowadays. Well, shockingly enough, this is not the case. Today, in 2023, in the Western world, women are still paid less than their male counterparts for exactly the same work. Only a few months ago, it came to light that a lady was paid 100,000 euro less per month for exactly the same job as her male colleague, who even had less experience at the same job. And let me share with you that they were both legal counsel at an online departure store in the Netherlands. She went to court and the employer had to compensate her. Well, obviously, but the fact that she had been paid far less was a shock to many. Equal pay for the same work is something that should be tackled world over. It is an absolute no-brainer, we all would agree, but the problem is that people think there are justifiable reasons in certain cases to pay differently. They are wrong. The reason why we have to fight this issue first is because it applies to all women, no matter if they are in leading positions or not, if they are working at factories or not. It touches upon every single job and every single woman working wherever in the world. The growing acknowledgement of women's rights and participation in the economic arena has been strengthened by 4 global United Nations Women's Conferences. However, there is still a long way to go before women can be economically equal to men. If wages develop as they have been in recent years, women in the European Union will not earn as much as men for more than 63 years, according to the calculations of Bloomberg, using figures from the European Statistics Office, Eurostat. The Eurostat's data show that across the EU, the progress on closing the gender pay gap has slowed down. Although men's and women's wages have been creeping closer together, at the end of 2021, the average difference between men's and women's gross hourly earnings were 12.7%, only 0.2 percentage points less than the year before. Figures for 2022 are not yet available, but you can do the math. At the current rate, it will take women another, as I already told you, 63 years until full equality is reached. So by the time our granddaughters or daughters are born this year, reach their pension, they will earn about the same as men. A gender pay equality bill, which was submitted on March 7th, 2019 in the Netherlands, until today, more than 4 years later, has not yet been passed by the House of Representatives. All hope is now vested on the European Union. New rules on wages will be voted on the EU shortly. This will include equal pay for men and women. If the new measures are adopted, employers will have to publish information on pay gaps. But not paying the same wages for women should not only be prohibited by law, but also not be accepted by the business community worldwide. This should be a global focal point on the future of work, where success should and could be accomplished easily. Only once women are paid the same wages as men, in every walk of life, we can demonstrate that the next step is set for gender equality for the future of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Nordman. And I think it's really important, after the tokenism of Women's Day, that, they had this day to celebrate, and I've never been a big fan. But having said that, I think when you spoke about equal pay, we need more Billie Jean Kings and Margaret Courts and Serena Williams out there in every single sphere, I think, to fight for that equality. And I'm glad you brought that point up. But just one more question I'd like to ask you. If you would choose, and we know that I think a big problem is inclusion of women in the workforce. The number of women in the workforce in India has actually gone down. And do you think that the future of work, the jobs and hybrid working will actually encourage more women to come back into the workforce? Or what do you think of one or two ideas that you think would get women back into the workforce?
I don't think it will bring them back, quite honestly, because they have been juggling family life and work during the pandemic, and it hasn't become any easier. So therefore, the thing is that people are looking at quota. I was mentioning a different quota, but at quota for women in leadership roles. But it's not only leadership roles that are important, but as you said, role models and ambassadors in the world showing that women are not different people. They look at things differently, and it should be, this is a thing that I think it's really important, that when women and men are working together, we get the perspective from different angles. I'm not so much an ambassador for pushing women in the workforce. What I am an ambassador for is for working together and to have a joint approach from women and men, because they can jointly add to the workforce. And what I see also, if you look at social media, not all is bad there, by the way. So if you look at social media, you sometimes see that people are having statistics about women, and then you see in the comments the men, so how does that relate to the statistics about men? What I'm missing in the discussion is the inclusion of men and women in the workforce and working together, because we don't want it to have a sole focal point on women, and that I think would really drive things forward if the joint effort of women and men working together at the same thing just shows that a better result can be achieved in such a way.
Oh, thank you for that. And we've seen that, people that have lots of women representation on boards actually have stronger companies, have stronger balance sheets, just because of that perspective. And I'd like our last speaker, Mr. Paul Bradley, to talk to us, and then maybe I can ask you a question after.
Thank you. Having lived in Mumbai for 4 years and then seeing the transformation of India after being locked away for 3 years with the COVID crisis. It's just spectacular to see the changes. And the fact that G20 is being hosted by India, just as we come out of this crisis, as India assumes a new leadership role as a rising economic superpower, I think this is really symbolic, and it's something we should all be very proud of. I will, from our last speaker from the Netherlands, add that there are mainly men in the audience, not women, so we can do better with that for women leadership. But, you know, I fell in love with India, and I had the privilege of living in Mumbai and getting involved with building some logistics cities and other things, traveling around the country, and every time I saw the changes, right? The bridge that finished in Mumbai and the new airport, the Delhi airport, and new airports again coming up. And again, what I think is exciting is the new regional airport hubbing. Having India as a hub beyond Dubai and Qatar is just a natural thing in terms of the population. And the order of 480 airplanes is a pretty good symbolism of where you're going as a great country. The Chinese have a phrase, may you live in interesting times. And we do right now. We have deconstruction of supply chains. I spent a lifetime building supply chains. They're not going to look the same again. They're not going to be optimal again because of geopolitical realities. It's just a fact. We have political issues, but we all have to be optimistic. And this is one of the most unique times in world history for the following reason. The agrarian to the Industrial Revolution took about 120 years. The change from the Industrial Revolution to the digitalization revolution with AI, robotics, blockchain, Web 3.0 architecture, it's happening in 10 to 15 years. And everything in every one of your businesses will never look the same again. From my logistics industry of the past, here's an interesting statistic. By 2025, there will be 50,000 robot-controlled warehouses. No human beings, 50,000. That's not in the distant future, it's 2.5 years from now. Within 9 years, there will be 8 million transport jobs vanishing in the United States because of autonomous vehicles. So we really, as leaders, especially with CII always taking a spectacular role with these conferences and supporting India in so many ways, we really have to challenge ourselves as business leaders to see what's coming. Every employee you have is becoming more difficult. They want to work from home, they want to work at the office, they want to change jobs every couple of years for self-fulfillment. But you have to invest in every one of them, because the challenge is if they don't learn new skills, they lose all their value within 3 to 4 years. I'm very privileged to work with this team on the B20 task force for the future of work, skilling, and mobility. And tremendous work has been done on that as part of the G20 process. And we're looking at recertifying the skills of every worker every 3 to 5 years for the rest of their life. You don't even have a choice. You have to invest in upgrading. But what we're all challenged to look at, what are the skills that matter? When you come out of a college, I'm privileged to be on 3 university advisory boards, including SP Jain here in India. And SP Jain is using facial recognition to look at the professor and the students to see how they're reacting to the lectures, and smart learning. And so these trends are coming very quickly. But are you prepared? And that is the question. And for India to rise the way it's inevitably should, and I believe will, you have to lead that transformation here as well. You have to think about what are the skills your employees are going to need and your managers. How are you going to invest along with the government in giving them those skills? And what does it mean? We need to change the education system. When we finished B20 task force in Indonesia, We had the Minister of Education announce that if you're in university and you want to work for a startup for a year and it's approved by the dean, you'll get a full year of university credit because they want the next generation to become entrepreneurs. And we talk about the power of SMEs, right? In India, in the Netherlands, everywhere. In Singapore, where I live, SMEs are the lifeblood of the future economy because they're nimble, they can shift, they can adapt. And so we really need to support SMEs to grow, to prosper. We have to encourage entrepreneurs. If they fail, they come back. I wanted to learn about the new economy, so after my supply chain career, I started mentoring tech startups all over the world, 40 countries. There's nothing as humbling as mentoring a 22-year-old who's a lot smarter than you are, because they know things we don't even understand. And so I try to help them understand how to design companies and unlock their value, but I'm always learning. And so we need to encourage this amazing entrepreneurial power base that India has and connect it to the world. And we need to do that across the globe. So when we look at the future of work, skilling, mobility, we're counting on you to completely readapt your organizations, to think about what are the skills of the future that we need, and to understand that we don't have a choice. We have to live with artificial intelligence and robots. And so the whole education system has to be redesigned now, not in 10 years from now. And every role in your company has to be repositioned and constant training while you motivate the employees to stick around. But we're in the most exciting 10 years in world history. It can be scary or it's going to be an incredible challenge. And I have no doubt that India will rise to that challenge, as will the rest of the world. Dhanyawad, shukriya.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bradley. And I think everyone really resonated when you spoke about mentoring younger people. But don't leave it to ChatGPT to do it, or Google. So I think we all have a role to make sure that we mentor them. But really a question for you. You know, for years we've been speaking about the mismatch between educational institutions and real life and how people go through jobs. In fact, most people say that that by the time you finish your education to the time you finish your career, anything you studied is completely irrelevant, and you've moved 3 or 4 jobs, or the way that you've looked at things are different. So while I think lifelong learning is important and here to stay, but what would be the fundamental things that you think we need to make some changes on?
Thank you. Is this on? Yes. My voice is louder than it was up there. Anyways, first of all, our great challenge is that we need employees to stay in our companies, because we have to invest in upskilling them and motivating them, or they have no value. And at the same time, they get bored and they want to move to another job. So we have to figure out how to grow these people and train them and unlock their value, because it's critical to our companies, but it's a different DNA, and we're going to have to work through that. When we look at universities, a lot of the hard skills have no more value because computers do it. AI does it. When I used to learn finite mathematics and other things, the computer does that. Even my phone does it now. So we need soft skills. We need creative skills. We need people who are constantly adapting and evolving. I think more important than a set of skills is the skill of constantly learning and adapting. So everyone is going to have to go online and learn and upgrade themselves permanently for the next 40 years, right, in our career path. And the biggest risk is the comfort zone, because so many people they get their job, they're comfortable with what they're doing, they feel self-actualization, but that's a danger zone today in the new economy. You have to constantly learn and grow. And so the schools are going to have to change the methodology of how they teach, from elementary up to university. We're going to need soft skills that are done in a way that computers and AI can't do it. And then in other cases, we need to leverage optimal benefit of computers and robots. So look at a warehouse. A lot of the things humans do are now taken over. But what humans do well is adapt to crises and shifting things and shifting supply chains. And AI hasn't done that yet. But the whole industry that I'm from, 80% of the jobs have changed in the last 10 years. Singapore will be having the second largest port in the world with no human beings. It'll all be automated. So we really need to spend time, and I think on the task force, it's one of our goals, and it's in the paper, identifying what are skills that really give you the power and the benefit of evolving in your career, and how do you keep constantly learning and upgrading along the journey. And that's the biggest challenge, and I think we need to redesign the school system in the next 3 to 4 years, not the next 10 or 12. You know, politically, this is a big challenge because we have to reteach our teachers so that they can teach the next generation. But I don't have the answer, I only have the hope.
I think we can work with hope. And by the way, India does have a new education bill, the first one since independence almost, of a radical reorganization of the school system. But I think it will take several years for this to really come into effect. We do have, about 5-7 minutes. Does anyone in the audience have a question for my distinguished panel? Please, the gentleman who raised their hand. You give him a mic. Let's be really brief with the question. And who would you like?
It is a very crystal clear question. You ask the question to the person. Fundamental things what you require in the future. 1 + 1 is equal to 2. That is the fundamental thing. Means we are working on doing on many things like machine learning, artificial intelligence, IoT, blah, blah, blah. But for machine learning, basic is statistics. In statistics, probability. Probability based on 1 + 1, mathematics. So science and mathematics 1 to 10 standard, what we study, that the basics we require. My name is Mrutyunjaya Hikdal Gutti. I am born and brought up in Dharwad, Karnataka. My capital city is Bangalore. I stay in Bangalore. I roam around the world, all metro cities. I'm a moonlighter. I work with the top 10 banks in the world. Like I was in Swiss Bank, London, and I was with the...
Your question, sir.
My question is, what is the fundamental, what next I want to know from you all?
What next for what? Okay. Right. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, there's one gentleman who's got the mic already.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah.
My name is Vishal Sanghvi. I am an innovator and economist. My question about validating the new future of work. There are a lot of technology available for the cloud computing with the communication, surveillance, CRM, ERP, but it's required to validate in some of the organizations. And it is very important once validate, those old tools. We can also create a lot of millions of jobs for the women, other things. But there is a requirement of the free capital for validating, because we go to something paid setup or new system to any company. First of all, they require something. So is there any such kind of free capital to be created where there is for a few months of time? Because we have to also validate, okay, how impacted these organizations. So this same study will be also copied by the other company. So is there any free capitals available where we can validate this old, convergence technology to create more jobs for remote work and more women's works in the world?
Right. Validation. Your question was about validation, and if there are any organizations that are actually doing this.
No, there are technologies, lot of technology available where we can efficiency proven about remote work practice for the women and other area actually. But at least if you go to any companies to validate these, really, firstly, they ask about what is your validation in other company. Initially, we want to give this free access to them. There is a cost involved to deploy technology, but there is a requirement of this innovative practice to be held in an organization. So we require some capital, where
No, it's a good point. I think that CII has a skills council, and I would, urge you to meet Mr. Saugata, who would be really able to tell you to go into this in detail.
Okay.
Please make sure you see Saugata. We have 2 questions, that's it. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I work for the disability people, and I would like to know from anyone on the dais or from the audience, what are we doing to raise education and for the skilling of the rural people or the people from the villages? Thank you so much for listening and trying to answer my question. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gupta. I think first you said disability and rural. Okay. So many organizations are doing a lot. Government is also doing, but under public-private partnership, our NGO, for example, started Tare Zameen Par project last, 10, 12 years. And we have empowered and skilled many differently abled children. We don't call them disabled, or specially abled children, because their mental faculties are very much strong and better. And we have trained them in courses like graphic designing, IT, data entry operator, front offices. So this is number 1. Number 2, on rural, I have been advocating to NSDC when I was board, because we had run about 70 rural centers in the rural area. But the present schemes are all these NSDC schemes are primarily, they are so, the standards, they have kept it very good, but they may not be apt for rural. So I have been advocating to the government, and we'll raise in parliament, that we should have focus on rural skill centers, which may not be as immaculate with, like they want, all the air conditioning and biometrics, and although those things can't be adhered to rural. But yes, we agree in principle, we have to do the skilling, especially the artisans work, the craftsmen work, the women in rural area. Thank you.
Mr. Brandy.
If you'll forgive me, I just wanted to make a comment also to you, because it's really important. How do we empower people all across the country, all across the world, not just in the major cities? In this place years ago with the World Economic Forum, I had the privilege of sitting next to Mr. Azim Premji from Wipro. And I was amazed because he said, we invested in all this talent in Mumbai and Delhi and Bengaluru, etc. And we forgot the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th tier cities with incredible talent. So he had funded scholarships for over 200,000 students across the country. And he said, I need that for the future talent of my company, right? And I know this has changed so much with all the government support and efforts. And that is how you have so much talent at tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities and the villages that need access to the internet, that need the opportunity. And there are some amazing entrepreneurs that are going to come from there. So I heard that years ago. I'm working with one Indian startup, and he's trying to help the farmers and the fishermen access the internet in a cheaper way by linking the satellite system with cheaper tools, because if they have access to the internet, they can be more productive and they can also upskill themselves. So I think both entrepreneurs are finding ways to do this, as well as, of course, the government being very aggressive. But there's a lot of talent out there, and you raised a very important point about how do we pull that talent up in this new era.
Thank you, and it is important that no person is left out. I'm really sorry, we have time for just one more. The gentleman standing up.
I'm Anil Honda. Regarding Ma'am, regarding the workforce entry and exit level age factor, are we thinking on that on any lines? You want to revise the age?
Sorry?
On the age factor of the working force, entry and exit level, we have an age factor, yeah? So are we thinking of revising that age factor in any way?
So, I think that as jobs go by and the health standards, many countries have done it, and as they have aging, the younger countries and the developing countries, we've not looked at the problem, but personally from a healthcare perspective, I hear you, and this is something that in our organization that we're thinking about, because as people get older, they have the ability to work longer, and especially in sectors where for many more productive years, and in sectors that have acute shortages, you do not want a doctor or a nurse to retire while they're still able. So I think that it is based on criticality of the actual jobs. It's also based on the population strength, because we're talking globally and not just for India. But I think one thing we have to recognize, that while India thinks of itself as a young population, we should also think of ourselves as an aging population. There are more than 90 million people who are over the age of 60, and in another 3 years there'll be 120 million people, and that's larger than the size of most countries have people over 60. So this will become a problem anywhere in the world, not just China or any of the larger populated countries or the smaller countries. So thank you for bringing it up. We will. I'm super sorry. I love to stick to time. I'm going to give closing remarks, but what I suggest you all do is that we're available to talk to you all offline. Then I'm happy to do it one-on-one.
What have you done as Apollo?
To retain?
Yeah. In Apollo, what special have you done to retain your workforce? Because retention is much more difficult than recruitment.
I think it's a long question, and in healthcare, it's something that you will find people, global mobility, so nurses will move. We continue to train more people, we continue to work with them, upskill, do all the right things. And I think that more than motivation, people have found a purpose in healthcare. So for us, connecting to the purpose really makes a big difference. And this is something that you'll find that our attrition really is much lower. But I don't want to get into that. Happy to have a one-on-one. I want to bring this excellent session to a close. And I think that what's most important for this large audience here is you've listened to disruptions and opportunities. People have spoken about, my distinguished speakers have spoken about the importance in your vocabularies. When you think about reskilling, upskilling, mobility, please think that you have to think about sustainability, because this is a world where we need sustainability. When you're thinking through your policies, remember that AI will become critical to just about everything that we do today. Anybody that has a mobile phone or anyone that has a basic education is going to think through how AI could disrupt every single industry. We have to keep in mind that diversity and inclusion, and by inclusion, I also mean the people who are lesser abled, people who are in geographies that have no access. So all these of inclusion and diversity, especially women, we need to think about, we need to have those conversations at the top table. You need to put it into your mainstream lists of when you're designing your policy for employment. And of course, when we spoke about aging societies. So having said that, please take all this, and whatever you've heard today doesn't mean anything if it doesn't make a difference. First, as in CII, what we always say is we stand for the country first, we stand for industry next, and then we stand for our own personal companies, because you need to have sustainability. So I sincerely hope with that, in this opening session, some answers to all three have resonated with this entire audience. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Ms. Kamineni, and thank you to all the panelists. It's been a great session, and I'd like to request Madam to kindly give away a few gifts, a token of appreciation from all of us to each of the speakers. Jaldi, jaldi. And with that, we bring this session to a close. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll start with the next session immediately after this. And the session is on harmonization of skill standards, key enabler for mobility of skilled talent. And the session will begin in 5 minutes precisely. Yes, now you have all the questions. I know. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request all of you to please settle down once again. We are ready to start with the next session. Please settle down so we can start with the next session. Post that, we have a large gathering with a large number of important ministers for the inaugural session, and we want to ensure that everything goes on time. Please cooperate and please settle down. We'd like to start with the next session right away. Once again, please join me in welcoming all our esteemed guests for this session. We have with us Mr. Lohit Bhatia, President Workforce Management, Quest Corp Limited. Ms. Nicole Scoble-Williams, Global Future of Work Leader, Partner Deloitte Tomatsu Consulting. Dr. Neerav Mandir, Chief Human Capital Officer, Sri Ramakrishna Export Private Limited. Mr. Gabriel Bordado, Regional Skills and Employability Specialist, Decent Work Team for South Asia, International Labour Organization. Dr. Aishwarya Mahajan, President M3M Foundation. And we will be joined shortly by the special guest for this session, Mr. Atul Kumar Tiwari, Secretary, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. To begin this session, I'd like to invite Mr. Lohit Bhatia, President Workforce Management, KES Group Limited, to kindly take over the session and take it forward. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. So first and foremost, warm welcome to everybody who's traveled to Delhi for this CII summit. Couldn't have asked for better weather. I'm sure you're enjoying the blue skies, which Delhi doesn't very often get to see. But for the last couple of weeks, we have extremely great weather. So warm welcome to everybody who's been here. So we've been hearing before our session about future of work. We've been hearing about skills. We've been hearing about harmonization, mobility, and what really happens. We are in the business of employability and skilling. And I must tell you one thing, this is a common debate and a common discussion that I do with every new intern who comes and joins our organization. And I tell them, in the world, you can have many different products and services that you can work with, but there is only one product in your life that you will see which has a brain of its own, and that's when you're in the business of human capital. Because unlike anything else, whether it's financial, whether it's products, or whether it's services, they're inert and they do not have a mind of their own. They don't have a thought of their own. When you say, I want that vehicle, or I want that spectacle, or I want that pen, that product has to quietly go to the buyer who has made this happen. It's only in the business of HR, employability, and human capital that the product itself, which is the human itself, can turn around and say, but I don't want to be with this person. So what if you're planning to buy me? So I think that's why discussing skilling and discussing about human capital is very, very important. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of CII and on my personal behalf, I extend this warm welcome to all of you, and joining us for the session that we have, harmonization of skill standards, the key enabler of mobility of skill talent. I am absolutely privileged to be joined by my distinguished panel on the stage. We have the Secretary of Government of India, Mr. Atul Kumar Tiwari. He is running a few minutes late, so I will introduce him a little late on that, and my apologies for that. We will go to the next speaker, which is Ms. Nicole Schobel-Williams, the Global Future of Work Leader, partner at Deloitte, the Matsu Consulting. A lawyer by profession, Nicole works with businesses and governments to embed future of work vision into enterprises, into businesses, technology, and workforce strategy. She has also co-authored Deloitte's point of view on the shift from survive to thrive in the accelerated future of work and Deloitte's Global Human Capital Trends report. Nicole, it's great to have you here. Dr. Nirav Mandir, the Chief Human Capital Officer from Shri Ramakrishna Exports Private Limited. Dr. Mandir shoulders the responsibility for global HR, for IR, for administration, for HSC, for CSR, for compliances, for one of the largest diamond and jewelry manufacturers. And this is not just for the ladies in the house. He deals with diamonds and jewelry. It's also for the men who have ladies at home. You can connect with him over networking session. And exports to the world with a revenue of over $1.8 billion. A project administrator for the SRK state-of-the-art manufacturing facility rated among the world's top 6 LEED Platinum buildings. He's also been awarded 100 top HR minds in India and most influential HR leaders in India. Dr. Nirav, great to have you here on the stage. Mr. Gabriel Bordado. Gabriel, Regional Skills and Employability Specialist, Decent Work Team for South Asia, based here with us at our very own New Delhi. He works for the International Labour Organization, the ILO, leading the design and development of projects and skill development initiatives in this sub-region, with emphasis on green and youth employment-related initiatives. Mr. Gabriel is also responsible for providing policy advisory services to the governments to employers and workers' organizations to integrate skill development into broader employment promotion strategies. Gabriel, great to have you here on the stage with us. And then, last but not the least, here on the far right, we have Dr. Aishwarya Mahajan. He's the president at M3M Foundation. Many of you may know M3M is a real estate major. However, he leads the foundation practice of M3M, doctorate in sociology from India with over 25 years of national, international experience, encompassing employment behavioral strategies, resource management, and client servicing skills across the different domains. Dr. Mahajan has been involved in working with stakeholders like the UN, International Development Organization, along with national, international governments across the world. Thank you, Dr. Mahajan, for joining us today. Drawing from the previous experience, Ms. Shobana and the panel were just ecstatic on the stage. They were extremely great. They very eloquently told us why we are having these panels today and what CII's focus is on this entire matter of skilling and mobility. We want to draw from that, and we want to talk about the changing nature of work due to rapid digitization. Today we know about the hybrid work. We also know about work from anywhere. We see that the rapid digitization and the rise of the new economies have changed the skill requirements and created further demand, but this demand is often very geographically centered, very sector and skill specific. This issue is further complicated with the changing nature of the workplace with remote working, where the talent can log in from anywhere in the world. And that's a big, huge challenge for most of the employers. Today, we have parts of the world which we say are thriving on economic innovation and technological leaps and bounds of innovation. At the same time, the same places or the same geographies may not have enough IT or tech talent. Let's take a little more specific example. Countries can spend hundreds of billions of dollars to commit to semiconductors and to commit to wafers and chip manufacturing for the future for their countries. They may have the hundreds of billions of dollars, but do they have the million of workers that are needed for those hundreds of billions of dollars? That becomes a challenge. Let's take another challenge. Back in Southeast Asia, in Europe and many parts of the world, we have an aged citizen population in many of these countries. It's not changing. Today, some of the panelists in the previous panel spoke about the fact that India will continue to have a demographic dividend at least till the middle of this century, till about 2050, 2054. And thereafter, it's known that it's Africa which will have the demographic dividend. But does that mean that enough talent is available for Far East Asia, Southeast Asia, or for Europe as their population age to care for their population? These are real world problems. These are real life problems. CII has been working on the skill development initiatives for more than 4 decades and has played a leading role in the institutionalization of skill development landscape in our country at India. I'm proud to state that through these initiatives of CII, we impact over 1 million youth annually. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the strategies and many other questions which we will try to answer today, along with diversely skilled workforce from across the globe, or the need for skill standardization. And it's imperative and it's important as you understand that these standardization happen. It's my firm belief as well that the skill standardization and the process of aligning skills to a shared set of rules at a national, international level will be crucial towards developing a skilled workforce that can adapt to the rapidly and the changing job market. This approach will also give the employers the confidence to make bold hiring decisions, that it gives them concrete ways to measure the competency levels. Let's imagine someone's looking at great programmers. The first thing they have to define is who's a programmer. The second thing they have to define is what is greatness. And if these two things cannot be defined in a standardized manner, in a holistic manner, in a harmonized manner, it will be extremely difficult for talent mobility to actually impact us. I will give you some data and statistics. India is the proud president for, or has the presidency for G20 this year. as part of B20, those are part of our deliberations that we are also taking. B20 is just 20 nations together, but these 20 nations contribute 80% of the world's gross domestic output. They contribute 75% of the merchant export in the world, and they contribute nearly 2/3 or 65%, nearly 6 billion of the population of the world. So hence, it becomes even more important on our topic. The ways the talent suppliers can train people in line with the definition and the unit of measurement. As a result, the approach benefits both the employer as well as the job seeker. Two clear examples that come to our mind today is the National Credit Framework, which is from India itself, and the European Credit System for Vocational Education and Training, ECVET. Against this backdrop, we will explore if G20 nations can use this approach to improve the global competitiveness, promote labor mobility, enhance the quality, relevance of education and training, and encourage investments thereon. Countries can develop skilling matching frameworks that compare job seekers with appropriate job opportunities based on their skills, knowledge, and experience to reduce the impact of the current skill gap that meets the demands of the rapidly changing global economy. This will be an ideal way that we can complement and have standardization of skills. Before I call upon our first speaker, Shri Atul Kumar Tiwari ji, who's joined us now, let me just warmly welcome you, sir. Mr. Atul Kumar Tiwari is the Secretary at the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India, who's been spearheading the Skill Development Mission of India. And we all know how ambitious that program has been in the last couple of years and going ahead. He's the 1990 batch of the IAS from the Karnataka cadre and an MBA in public policy from the UK. He has handled different portfolios in the state of Karnataka, particularly in industries and commerce, urban infrastructure development and education, with many more accomplishments to his name. In the Government of India, he has served with the distinction in Ministries of Urban Development, Overseas Indian Affairs, Rural Development, Textiles, Information and Broadcasting. Under his leadership, the MSDE has launched and scaled up initiatives such as National Apprenticeship Program Scheme. In our country, we famously know it as the NAP scheme. And the Technical Intern Training Program, which is also known as the TITP program with Japan, which was signed by the erstwhile Japanese Prime Minister and our current Prime Minister, and skill development for overseas placements. Sir, I'm sure that under your deft leadership, the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship will accelerate its skill and entrepreneurship initiatives to greater heights and generate immense impact. May I please call upon you for your special address.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lloyd Bhatia, Ms. Nicole Scoville-Williams, Mr. Niro Mandir, Mr. Gabriel Bordado, Dr. Aishwarya Mahajan, and all the ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege to speak at the B20 platform on a skill standard harmonization and international mobility. The issue of building a global workforce is central to realizing our Honorable Prime Minister's call for One Earth, One Family, One Future as the scheme of the G20 dialogues. Our ministry is also implicated into two working groups, G2G, which is on working group on education, where we are assisting the Ministry of Education on future of work, and also the working group on labor, in which we are working with them on the topic which is harmonization of skill standards and mobility, etc., which is the part of this discussion today. During our research, we found that the skilling has always been a very pivotal agenda adopted by various presidencies over the years by G20 nations since 2015. Starting from investing to skills, global leaders have endorsed following the building an inclusive, lifelong learning approach, combining education, skill, and world of work. As Mr. Lohit Bhatia was saying, the skilling is in the crossroad of employment as well as education, and it's not always easy to find a way and to bring the skilling to the fore, but this discussion and among others would help us bring the skilling to the fore, and that is why it is said that if the countries like India, they go for the upskilling of their working age population, it will lead to a 6.2% increase in their GDP, which is a study by the World Economic Forum. And we have seen that, and during the budget also, that skilling is something inherent in all sectors of our economy. Our Honorable Prime Minister during 17th Pravasi Bharatiya Divas held in Indore said that India has the opportunity to become not only a knowledge center, but the skill capital of the world. India has capable youth with skills, values, and passion and honesty for work, and India's skill capital can become the engine of global growth. The global skill and job scenario represents India with a significant opportunity to fill in the talent gap. A recent Tom Korn Ferry study estimates that by 2030, there will be a global human talent shortage of more than 85 million people, or roughly equivalent to the population of Germany. At the same time, the report also estimates that India will be the only country in the world to have a talent surplus of nearly 250 million people by 2030. And as we have seen, this talent shortage being witnessed in many high-income countries has resulted in them turning towards India and other developing countries to help mitigate this shortage. Very recently, countries like Australia, Germany, France, Austria, UK, Finland, etc. have inked various mobility partnerships with India. Our Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship is at the forefront of our country's efforts to support those citizens who aspire to migrate overseas by providing skilling pathways of international standards. In the recent budget of 2023 and 24, our Finance Minister has announced the opening of 30 Skill India International Centers to bridge the global shortage of workforce in the coming years by reaping the demographic dividends of the young Indian workforce. Our ministry has also signed around 11 G2G MOUs and 23 B2B MOUs through National Skill Development Corporation, which focus on enhancing opportunities for migration of a skilled workforce from India, as well as improving the quality of skilling in India as per the standards of destination countries. We currently have multiple ongoing collaboration initiatives with countries like Germany, Japan, Australia, UAE, Saudi Arabia, etc. Very recently, a collaborative exercise between India and Australia was concluded with a framework mechanism for mutual recognition of qualification on education and skills. We have also tried to assess through NSDC the manpower demand in 16 countries, and it is estimated that there will be global demand of 3.7 million skilled and trained workforce in the coming 5 years across various countries. In the study, healthcare, manufacturing, science and information and technology emerged as priority sectors for migration with significant employment share, maximum unmet demand, robust growth, and attractive migration environment. Among these sectors, 3 job roles, nurses, ICT professionals, and engineers emerged as the priority sectors across the selected countries. As Mr. Bhatia was saying, that it is necessary that the skill partnership among G20 countries is given a fresh impetus. I would like to list some critical global collaboration areas to enhance skill standards harmonizations. 1. Global skill taxonomy. A recent ILO and OECD technical paper articulates the need to enable G20 countries to communicate with one another using a common language with respect to skills. To enable this, there is an urgent need to develop a global skill taxonomy at a granular level to capture skills and competencies, at the same time flexible enough to capture the varied realities across different countries. Second, the rapidly evolving future of work is leading to fast-paced skill shifts and exacerbating skill mismatches. As the global skill gap grows, a holistic resolution requires that individuals, governments, and businesses move beyond working in silos to develop innovative, sustainable, and scalable solutions. Accurate labor market information and intelligence is required for developing evidence-based skill policies. Hence, it is critical that we collaborate to undertake global skill gap assessments. Third would be the harmonization of qualification and qualification framework, which will involve developing common referencing mechanisms to promote mutual understanding of skill levels and outcome descriptors. Standard supplements can be developed for skills and education to convey the value and promote mutual understanding of a qualification from different G20 countries. A common benchmark skill standards can be adopted by the G20 countries. One such example can be innovative adoption of World Skill International as a benchmark skill standard. The World Skills-based pilot is already underway as part of ASEAN MRA, as well as Russia and Uzbekistan have a partnership for leveraging World Skill-based Skill Passport program. And finally, the G20 countries can develop or adopt a suite of digital public goods and services to further the skill partnership. They can involve applications for job aggregation, global skill gap estimation, imparting technological skills, digital skill assessment, and micro-credentialing, curated learning pathways, etc. I hope that we are able to touch upon some fundamental issues related to skill standards harmonization, which not only promotes mobility of a skilled workforce, but enhances the delivery capacity of national skill development system. I look forward to some further interesting insights on this topic by the esteemed panel and by the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Tiwari. That was very insightful. While I take away many things from your opening speech, the one thing I definitely take away is that you are creating a factory of workers, not just for India, be it IT or non-IT workers, but you're creating them for the world. We can definitely see many countries coming here, shopping for our talent in times to come. Thank you so much for the work that your ministry is doing. Would you want to add to that? Okay. I will move to Ms. Nicole, our next speaker. Ms. Nicole, would you want to make your opening comments, please?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is such a privilege to be here with you all today and my fellow panelists to engage in such an important dialogue around skills standardization. I'd like to take a moment to zoom out for a moment and to encourage you to think about the bigger context of skills standardization. For those of you that may be familiar with our Deloitte Human Capital Trends report that we've recently released, we talk about this new boundaryless world of work. We in particular focus on 6 key shifts that we see to be transforming the future of work. One is the shift from jobs to skills. The next is the shift from employees to workforce ecosystems. The third is the shift from flex work to flex everything. The fourth, from productivity to looking at all of the levers to unlock human performance. The fifth, using technology to automate work, to using technology to augment human capabilities and make work better for humans and humans better at work. And the sixth, shifting from employee-led models to those that are designed around harnessing the rise of worker agency. Now, the first shift that I mentioned was the shift from jobs to skills. And you might think, that's what we're talking about here with skills, standardization, harmonization. But I'd like you to think about how all of those 6 key shifts are powered, are enabled, are accelerated by skills standardization. We are in a world of work that is no longer stable, predictable. It's a world that's about speed, agility, perpetual disruption. All of the boundaries that we once had that helped us maintain the natural order of how we worked, where we worked, when we worked, are starting to fall away. We no longer structure work around jobs. We no longer perform most of our work within the 4 walls of the on-site work environment. No longer is our work performed mainly by our on-balance sheet employees. All of these shifts, these boundaries are falling away and creating new, exciting possibilities for workers, employers, and society at large that are willing to show up in fundamentally new and different ways. Skills standardization, harmonization becomes the superpower to unleash these new possibilities and aspirations. So I'd encourage you to think about those 6 key shifts and to really explore the art of the possible as we continue to engage in the discussion and really look at what is that art of the possible? What can we unlock for workers, employers, and society at large if we can really make that shift to skills standardization? Thank you, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion ahead.
Thank you so much, Nicole. If I may ask you a follow-up. You work across the multitude of industries in multiple countries across the world and different sectors. Not only do you represent your organization, but through your organization, your customers who are across the entire ecosystem. Can you shed some light on what are some of the challenges that you see that we can face in the skill harmonization and standardization? I think broadly we agree it's a necessity, but what could be the challenges that we face?
Well, I would say the key challenges are around the collaboration that is needed between government, private sector, civil society, to really focus on skills beyond the job and competencies beyond the degree. And if I may touch on just 3 challenges. One is around, if we want skills standardization to function sustainably, it needs to be designed for speed. It needs to be able to keep up with the constant change in the skills that are relevant and needed for today, tomorrow, and beyond. We need the power of AI to provide those continuous real-time analytics on the trends and what's happening with the skills that we need for today and tomorrow. Secondly, if we really want to unlock the benefits of skills standardization, businesses need to be ready and able to structure work beyond just the job, to start deconstructing work into tasks and skills so as they can actually then unleash those possibilities. So I think that is really, really key. How do you actually deconstruct that? You know, we need to be able to manage work differently. And then the third one I would say is around the collaboration that is needed between training and educational institutions and industry. And we need government to help with policies to incentivize that collaboration, to help drive that collaboration, so as we can actually work together. We can work together to work out what are the skill supply demands, how are we going to keep up, and really drive the way forward. Because without that collaboration, how can we really unlock and identify the skills that are important today, tomorrow, and beyond? And how can we make sure that we're also tackling the way we need to develop the global skill-based standards for assessment, for competency, for all of those frameworks, as well as tackle some of those challenges with things like regulation barriers, you know, technology infrastructure, quality assurance, even language and culture hurdles. And so we need to be able to do that together to really drive the way forward and make that work better for humans and humans better at work.
Thank you, Nicole. Collaborate, remain agile, and think global. Dr. Nirav, if we can have your opening remarks, please.
Good afternoon to all of you. My co-panelists, Mr. Tiwari, Secretary MST, the dignitaries and guests of the dais. It's indeed a proud and privileged moment for me to having me. Thank you very much to CII for inviting me and address this partnership summit. As we talk, and my fellow speakers have already pondered upon, and especially when the India is having the presidency for G20, I could not refrain by saying a quote that the test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. Rather, it is whether we provide enough to those who have too little. And India is also setting the benchmark where the MSMEs of India are contributing almost 90% business to the global Indian economy. And we are truly passing through a very unprecedented time. We can't avoid what is happening around the globe. It's not only due to the disruption into the geopolitical scenario or the post-COVID era, but we are holding this, especially on the theme of this panel discussion, is harmonizing the skill standards, while GPT is buzzing the entire world. So if you go through the McKinsey report, which was published in almost 3 months back, it states that 87% of the organization globally, they are either facing the talent crunch in the respective domain, or within next 6 years, the situation would be much severe as far as the respective skills are concerned. So technically, we are passing through a very interesting time where academia is talking that the students passing out from the academia are not getting the desired job. At the same time, human capital practitioners like me and the industry is stating that they are not getting the worthy talent. So don't you think it's a great paradox? And if you ask me, the reason, what I believe, is due to the working in silos for both for the industry and academia. So until and unless there has to be a kind of a global or kind of a platform where they can join hands and share that what exactly is missing as far as the skills are concerned. Mr. Secretary also talked about that through NSPC, they jot down the respective job roles and they are doing their good part by providing the respective skill sets to the respective companies, and especially the talents lying in the respective companies. And you'd be glad to know, sir, that at SRK, where we employ more than 6,000 employees, and the average education within the employee is less than higher secondary. But the skills are so niche that every employee is completely certified by RPL4 scheme, which is run by NSDC, and it might be the only company within the entire James and Jewelry sector where the 100% workforce is certified with recognized prior learning certification run by this NSDC. So gone are the days where the degree only matters, or especially with the new National Education Policy 2020 in place, if you are having a niche skills to work upon, it's not only required to have the worthy degree in the respective domain. When Prime Minister talks about the sutra for this G20 presidency, the one earth, one family, so even we can have a kind of a platform where respective identified job sets could be there on the platform, and the industry could have the access of those skill set. So it would be a win-win situation for both the candidates and the employer to identify the mutual desired need within the respective domain. I'm sure you must be aware that the SEBIs keep on coming up with the benchmarks, especially BRSR, the Business Responsible Sustainability Reporting, and the ESG as per the last revision of it. But what about the competencies been built upon on those platforms? So at the same time, the courses and the skills like ESG, environment, social and governance, and the sustainability reporting, we have to work upon simultaneously to have the desired and the competent workforce within the organization, so that they also be prepared how they should be carry out the respective tasks. So these are the skill set which it's kind of required in the due course of time as far as the future of skills are concerned. At the same time, there has to be a harmony between the respective skill set. If I quote the examples, especially in the medicals, still, if anyone is doing any medical degree in India, they are not valid globally, or might be to some of the countries. So how we can build that harmony of the degrees in the respective domain, so that the person who has already passed out the respective domain in the area could not be it should not happen that they are not eligible to pursue their practice in their respective countries. So how we can build this harmony within the G20 nations to have a kind of a standardization of the respective skill sets in that. So thank you very much for having in. And what I gather is if we talk about the future of skills, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Thank you very much.
Dr. Nirav, thank you very much. Extremely insightful. 6,000 employees, higher secondary only as far as education is concerned, but highly niche in what they do. You spoke about the RPL as a certification. What kind of challenges do you see, and what kind of benefit do you see when you put the workers through an RPL kind of a certification? Does the worker feel that they are more empowered? Now they can also look outside of the SRK universe, maybe outside of India for that matter. Do you get that kind of support as well?
Yeah, as you rightly mentioned that the average education of the 6,000 employees is less than higher secondary. The biggest challenge for us to hire the talent is because we do have an in-house training center. So we don't recruit any experienced person in the technical side, because they are working with very niche skills. So if anyone wants to join or come in the diamond industry, they have to go through that center. And we provide a kind of a 90 days program for them. And it's totally a kind of we don't charge any fee for the same. So for them, and we don't ask for any bonds as well as. So once they're through with that course, if they want to join SRK or work in our company, they are free to do. If they don't want to, they are free to go elsewhere. So we don't ask for any bonding or a kind of a contract. And if they don't join, we consider it as a CSR. So that is the challenge. And when they are not having any formalized education, and when we just make them run through this RPL program, so they feel empowered at one point of time. At the same time, they also feel that that's not a kind of a cliche for them to not have a kind of a formal degree or a diploma or a certification. But at the same time, if their skills are certified, and big thanks to NSDC, which comes under the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, they came with that program to make the workers more empowered in their respective domain. And imagine, suppose a less than higher secondary educated guy, had it been, they were not working in the James and Jewelry sector in the respective domain, what work would they would be able to do it, and what kind of salary they would be able to earn it. And I am not refraining to even share the average salary of the 6,000 employees is almost 45K per month. So that's kind of a skill on which they are working upon. And it's again a proud moment for India that India is having the epicenter for the diamond cutting and polishing industry. And Surat is known for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great work that you and your team are doing. You know, this reminds me of a thought. I was born in 1974, and 70s was the decade. All the people back then who were there and prior to that would remember we had lots of labor unions, we had strikes in the textile mills, we had a lot of shutdowns in factories. That resonated so much with entrepreneurs that it took almost 20-25 years for people to start looking at manufacturing in a big way. But over the years, I have had this belief that to protect worker is not to give them protection only by law. What is essential is to give them choice. If you empower them and you give them choice, if you give them more opportunities, that's truly supporting labor. And I think India is coming off that ebb because we have more manufacturing setups, we have more skilling which is happening, we have more choice and opportunities which exist. And rightly so, we are seeing the IR issues dramatically come down as well. So thanks for bringing those points.
Just to add what Mr. Bhatia said, and you talked about the layoff, and the entire world is passing through a layoff, especially the MNCs. You all might be glad to know that in 2008, when the entire world was going through the recession, it might be the only company within the entire gems and jewelry sector across the world which didn't fire a single employee. And we paid, so there was no layoff even in 2008, and even in COVID times, it was like 100% salary, despite of having, and it's a manufacturing, so we were not working for 3 months due to lockdown. We paid the full salaries to along with the incentives to the workers, and that might be the reason that we are observing an attrition rate of 0.75% at the workplace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That brings me to switching gears and going a little international right now and get a policymaker's perspectives. Mr. Gabriel represents ILO. As I introduced him, can we please have your opening remarks?
Distinguished guest, Secretary Tiwari, my co-panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank the CII and the government of Egypt for inviting ILO here in this forum on the future of work and skills. The message that ILO would provide today will focus on the success indicators of global practice on mutual recognition of skills, which is really looking at, if you look at the thematic area today, that calls for harmonization of skill standards. But the primary aim here is to really look at the seamless mobility of students and workers, both at the national level and globally beyond the borders of the national system. As I have mentioned, harmonization, based on the experience, harmonization of skill standards is basically easily said than done. We can easily use several standards that are available, one of which is the International Standard for Classification of Organization, the World Skill Standards, which Secretary Tiwari has mentioned, and other standards from the European Council and at our neighbor, the Association of Southeast Asian Nation Standards. However, there is a need for this to be realized. There is a need to strengthen the quality assurance system of education and training at the national level. And this would mean a transparent system that, one, reflects the role of industry and key partners in the development, implementation of skill standards. Involving possible stakeholders, particularly the employers here, both domestic and international, will enable a comparison of education and training qualification across all sectors, and would definitely mean or facilitate the mobility of workers and students in transition from school to work and vice versa. Second, success indicators based on the global practice is that there's a need to implement a system for capacity development of key implementers, particularly instructors, trainers, and assessors. This system would really look at defining the competency sets of these key implementer, particularly the trainers and assessors, and bring them at that level through capacity development. The third point here is that there's a need for a system of registration of accrediting training institutions and schools. India has it now. The key here is to really expand and implement that down at the ground level. There is also a need to have a flexible and innovative delivery system for acquiring formal qualification and recognition. India is leading on that, but has to extend it again down at the ground level. India has a good e-learning facilities that can be replicated to even catch those at the disadvantaged group wherein not in education, not in employment and training. The fourth one is a working labor market information system. As mentioned by Secretary Tiwari, one of the global initiative of the Indian presidency is to initiate or develop a platform called Global Skills Gap for the G20 members. I think we need to look at and strengthen the working or the robust labor market information system. Given these success indicators, there is one, as mentioned by Secretary, the role of qualification frameworks. The qualification framework is a neutral mechanism starting from the national level, wherein qualifications are referenced or compared starting from the basic education, TVET, higher education, and post-higher education. And down, there's also a need to have a framework between country to country. And ILO is leading the development or facilitating the development of this so-called regional referencing framework. For South Asia, we are now developing or assisting the member state in terms of developing the South Asia qualification referencing framework, where India plays a major role in terms of that development. And hopefully, this framework will serve as the transparent or the neutral mechanism that would say, based on the analogy that the Secretary of Labor then told us, that it can compare my perception, say as a welder, compared to your perception as a welder. We need to have a common referencing to say that you are level 1 and I'm level 2. So this would be a very good move for India, given that you have the National Skills Qualification Framework that will unify the whole education and training system. By that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. Great to hear your thoughts from not just ILO perspective, but also South Asia perspective. I just have one follow-on question for you, Mr. Gabriel. In the NSQF framework, as you see it from the India perspective, do you think that that is quite replicatable in other countries as well and can be taken on? Like you rightly said, that in South Asia, those conversations are happening. G20 could possibly take it. That's first. And second, do we assign worker rights equally when we do the same? So harmonization of skills is great, but are we also at the same time keeping the workers' rights intact? Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. On the first question, I just would like to emphasize that there is no correct or wrong qualification framework. The NSQF is a good one, as I have emphasized earlier, and based on the key indicators of a successful contribution to the mutual recognition of skills, is we need to capacitate the key implementers. We need to bring down at the ground level how the NSQF is being implemented, provide a social marketing and advocacy to the key players and also the beneficiaries of this qualification framework, which is the students and trainers, our trainees and workers, as well as the community. So for me, it's a matter of educating, matter of advocating to the key implementers of the framework. On the second question about social security, I would rattle down here technical terms. ILO is a UN agency that really looks at developing standards that leads to decent work. And one of the flagship labor standards on social protection is Convention 102 and a Recommendation 02 that says there's an equal treatment of workers whether you are at the, there is an equal treatment of workers at the national level. So if you're a signatory to that, and Indian workers will go to a country of destination, we try to encourage these member states, both from the country of origin and country of destination, to look at this binding agreement of Convention 102 for the social protection of the workers.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I would last come to Dr. Mahajan. Dr. Mahajan, could you please give us your insight and opening remarks, please?
Thank you, Lohit-ji, Atul-ji, Nicole, Neerav-ji, and Gabriel, dear audience. I would like to congratulate and thank CII for creating this opportunity and bringing the like-minded organizations here to talk about the future of skilling. And now what we are discussing is the key enablers for mobility of skilled labor. So I just, we have talked about the international perspective. We have also talked about the, various qualification frameworks, RPL, and the kind of work which is happening with the ministry. I just want to change the perspective here when we talk about the, key enablers for mobility of skilled labor. So when we talk about being India, because representing M3M Foundation and working in the domain of skilling for last 25 years now, what I feel is we cannot leave rural India or the rural economy behind unless we take it together. We cannot move forward. And that's where when we talk about this mobility, I think we need to talk about the mobility from urban to rural also. When we talk about how these, the opportunities can be created in the rural areas, because that is something wherever we are talking about, even at the international level, we need to see all those economies, how we can bring that together and we can learn from that. So coming back to M3M Foundation, since we have been in skilling for last many years now with the perspective, the basic thing which we learn here is the importance of bridging the gap basically between the employer perspective and the beneficiary perspective. So unless we do this match of beneficiary and employer perspective, what the industry needs are there, and what are the needs of the, what are the skills and what kind of needs from the beneficiary perspectives are there, unless that is matched. Because Atulji, you know very well, when we are designing a kind of skill training center to be established and we get into the field, sometimes it happens, we identify the courses which are very much in demand. But when we get into the states like Gujarat and we start to design kind of programs which require more hard skills, and when we get into the field, try to mobilize the candidates, we did not get, that kind of mindset where the entrepreneurial, sets are there. And Mr. Gabriel, when we talk about, and with ILO, I have been associated with your Start and Improve Your Business, SIYB, very closely, where we tried to build the capacities of, these young entrepreneurs who have become the enablers, not only for themselves, but also they have created the opportunities for many to earn their livelihoods. And that is how, when we talk about, they need to be created, and these are the things when they need to become the local role models. Their stories have to be picked, and then we need to share with the larger audience. This is something which we need to talk about. I'll just give you a very small example from Bhutan, where in Punakha, which is a very small a kind of block, you can say, in Bhutan, where in villages where it's not, when you go to Switzerland also, this is the same phenomena, you go to any other. So you have these kind of villages where only women are there because men has migrated to the cities like Thimphu and Paro, or in the, when you go to Switzerland, whether it is Zurich or Geneva, they are working there, but your villages are not, villages are with only women there. So what happened now, the local resources needs to be identified, and that has been done in Bhutan. I'm quoting again an example where the tea leaves, which grow very naturally there in Bhutan, and these tea leaves were identified by the local girls, and these local girls were further trained on the processing of tea, and now they have their own brand with the name of My Gakit Village there, where they are talking about selling, and they are actually telling many more such groups to take that further. Foundation has also taken this similar kind of initiative in Ladakh, where we are working on the value chain of sea buckthorn. Now, sea buckthorn is a layberry which is harvested very naturally there, which has not been, you can say, taken very seriously till now. But now it is happening where within the value chain now the local youths are getting more interested towards that, and the whole value chain processing for the entrepreneurship which has been started. In the previous session also, my fellow panelist from Singapore also talked about the strengthening of SMCs or women entrepreneurship and all other things. I think these are the things which we need to talk about. And now 2-3 more things which I personally feel, being here with CII, what can be done is we can think of creating the international center for excellence, where the international skilling can be done. We have talked about frameworks, we have talked about, And I know the overseas placement, the cells at the state and national level also working on those lines. How we can bring that with the existing schemes which are available, whether it is your PMKVY, whether it is your Deen Dayal Upadhyay, or any other skill training schemes which we are talking about. So industry relations are very important. When we talked about whether how we are engaging them with the guest lectures, how we are bringing them for the exposures, how we are taking their support in the curriculum development, all these things are very important when we talk about. So for me, when we talk about harmonization of skill standards, definitely we are talking about skilling. We are talking about standardization of curriculum. We are talking about common certification. We have talked about the qualification framework. Skill vouchers we have already introduced, which we have taken. So can we think now on a level where when we are talking about the cross-learning can take place, where we can bring those success programs and projects from the peer countries, where we can bring those learnings together and try to work upon and create a kind of ecosystem which will help us to reach to the level what we are talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mahajan. And thanks, because this conversation could not have been over from this panel unless we went back to rural. And we were earlier talking about international, we were talking about India, we were talking about the cities. Thank you so much that you brought in the different perspective that we also have to think about the rural economy and the rural ecosystem in whatever we are discussing today. Just one follow-up for you. How do we create an ecosystem to enable the mobility of workforce, especially both when you see it from an India perspective around us and then the global perspective, because you also mentioned other countries where you've had active amount of work in this regards?
See, in my opinion, I already mentioned here also, when we talk about the creating systems. So I think already there are certain systems where you have created the state resource centers, where these kind of you can facilities, or you can say the kind of setups have been created where we are bringing these youth who are going further. Even for international centers, we have already talked about the overseas placement opportunities and these things which we have created. I personally feel now there's a time where we can work upon setting up the international standard skilling centers also, which can help us to design in that way the kind of needs. When now we are talking about Japan, now I in a very recent study I was reading, where a lot of people are coming back from Japan to China. They are coming back, and lot of skill sets are in demand at that particular country. And similarly for Vietnam and other countries also, these kind of things have opportunities have been identified. So we need to create a system where we can identify the opportunities which are available at the international level, how we can create that, we can develop a kind of learning mechanism, or the resource or knowledge sharing mechanism, where we can bring our resources together, and then those resources can help this particular segment, which can come there, build their capacity, because you have industry there, you have the beneficiaries there, and then the other side you also have the employers who are ready to take this. So if we can create that, I think that is something which we can definitely take it forward.
Thank you very much. That concludes our speakers. So I would want to now go to the audience, and I already see a couple of hands going up. Do we have mics in the, yeah, you could possibly go here, right in the front, then the gentleman there. We would need some mic there and some mic there. So
May I take, sir?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sir, when we are talking about harmonization of skill standards, we have in the G20, there are countries from Europe, the countries in Asia, and also North America. Now, obviously, the technology that we adopt in the production line is different machines, different generation machines. If you're talking about the skill standards, so how do we bring that kind of a cohesion and the connectivity, parity when it starts? How do you standardize? How do you define entry level, exit level? And if somebody who's trained in India to be adopted, say in Turkey, if he has to move, or to North American country, the kind of hurdles that we face will be different. How do we address this issue?
Brilliant question. Any specific member on the panel that you want to ask that to?
Anyone, but I know also.
Mr. Gabriel?
Actually, the standardization is basically the ultimate objective that we have. I've been working with standardization since I started working in the government in the Philippines for 20 years, then moving to ILO. And that the point we have here is we don't really insist that government like India should have a standardized, say, qualification. What we wanted initially now is to come up, is to reference the standards of India, say to Europe, say to South Africa, so that you can have now an indication of what are the areas or what are the competencies that you need to really work on, what are the unit of competencies that you have a high level. So it's more of referencing for a start. But we will eventually, I don't know for how long, because Secretary Attari was saying that India has decided to adopt the world skills as an option. Then probably in the next 5 years, we'll have now a world standard that says, okay, this is the standard for welding. Everybody should do that. But for me, the response to that, we should still work, we should initially work on referencing our standards, but eventually moving to our uniform standards at the end. Yeah, actually, that again, I have to re-emphasize that if you are looking for one standard, you have to first reference. Now, once you have a reference now, like if you compare the Indian standards to, say, European, like Germany, then it's time for you to decide now whether to adjust or maintain the standards that you have. So that's why I keep on emphasizing that initially we need to reference and that move towards the standardization.
See, here also we are talking about harmonization of skill standards. We are not, if I may be corrected, we are not saying that we are just talking about the skill standards. So it's harmonization. When we are saying harmonization of skill standards, what Mr. Gabriel is talking about is to reach to that level. So we need to have that. Okay, when we are talking about electrician, so can we talk about electrician? What basics, electrician should know? So, and then you can, club the countries. So you have a group of countries, you have the certain group of countries, so you can then go to stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. It's the kind of progression which can look into, and that's what we are talking about, harmonization of skill standards.
Is there a mic there? Yeah, we'll just come back to you.
Yeah.
We'll just come.
Good afternoon. Myself Kapil Parashar, and we are the NSDC approved TP. So we have just first mover in the rural areas with multi-skilling facilities with MSME by providing the all categories like electronics, computer, and there are so many options available, beauty parlor or so many courses available with this ESDP courses. So we have the mobile facility, mobile van facility, and we have adopted the degree colleges and the schools of the rural areas and we have generated this mobile lab facility to that particular area with MSME. But we are facing the same problem with the Ministry of Skill Development, because there is no such option available with NSDC. So is it possible that we will create a mobile van laboratory in the adopted colleges or degree colleges we have done, and we have provided the certificate with MSME. So it's possible with us to adopt the degree colleges and the last year students of the particular rural areas and train them with 2 months, and we are providing the incubation facility of 14 months after creating the self-help groups in the rural areas. So we have made more than 100 self-help groups right now. So my question is that these facilities can come under NISBUD, ESDP or EDP programs in near future. It will help us and create a great opportunity to the rural India, because we have created the so many skill centers within 15 days. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a very good suggestion. If you could definitely send that detail to the ministry as well as to NSDC. I hear from the secretary that it's something where the officers can definitely look at. But please do send that suggestion to them. But thank you very much for asking. Yeah, the gentleman here, if there's a mic here, and the gentleman at the back, and then there's a lady in yellow. We should not just give it to all the men.
Hello, sir, I am Kuldeep Vartaria. I am a business graduate and I am an academician and I am a columnist also. Sir, I would like to ask one question about India itself, not globally. How can we overcome the myth about the skilled worker? As we see that the
Okay, can you please hurry up with the question?
How can we standardize the prestige of the skilled worker in common man? And how can we overcome the myth which we have already in our country about the skilled worker? We all of us know about that.
So if everybody on the panel permits, I'll take that one. My organization, as I mentioned when I started, looks after employment, employability. We have 505,000 people, 500,000 people who are deployed as on today, as I sit here on the stage. Of that, 2/3 of the people come from blue and gray collar working segment. Second, in tier 2 to tier 5 towns and districts and talukas, we employ nearly 65% of our workforce. Last 12 months, when we added 300,000 people, 147,000 people for the first time came into formal jobs, and they got a UAN number for the very first time. So believe you me, there is a lot of change which is happening in the front line. There are a lot of formal jobs which are getting created in the front line, and many new disciplines and many new sectors are definitely adopting that. So thanks for your point. If one last, because I don't want the lady to feel that we've only allowed the men to ask questions.
So very warm greetings.
Unfortunately, we don't have time, but we have a. Can we just finish with that, please? Yeah.
So very warm greetings to the distinguished speakers. I'm Kriti Luthra, as Sustainability Manager from one of the corporate companies. And hearing the economical views on harmonization of skill standards, I would just like to understand what are the key challenges as disciplers when we talk about cross-cultural companionship or cooperation and collaborations. There must be something cross-cultural challenges that are being faced as leaders in this B20 task force. So just kindly throw some light over that. Thank you.
Nicole, would you want to take that one? The cross-cultural challenges?
Sure, and I think that it also perhaps connects into some of the other questions around how do we really measure and work out, so I mean, that's obviously one of the key challenges is around, okay, what might be considered an advanced level of mastery in one country may be, still intermediate in another. I think this is where the power of AI becomes really exciting, because AI can actually make those patterns. It can look and it can say, this person has had X number experiences doing this, or worked in X number of hours doing this, or has this number of relationships. And so I think one of those challenges comes back to the other question around, how do we measure? I also think that it again comes back to that collaboration to get the shared understanding. What's our outcomes that we're looking for? How do we align on those and make sure that we're all actually understanding what we need and why, so as we can really move those critical skills that we need across borders. But I really think the biggest challenge that I've observed and experienced is still about that need to design for speed. Because that's the other thing. One country may have a very advanced level in a particular skill. They may be in a market where that is the way that it's going to be embraced. And so I think this is where we need to design in a way where we can keep up, we can keep evolving, regardless of where a country may be at, the industry or sector may be at. So they're just some immediate thoughts.
So thank you very, very much. I see a lot of hands still coming up, but unfortunately we have to break. And I'm told if we cross any further, the lights would go off and so would the mics. So we don't want that situation to happen. Thank you very much. Thank you for being an engaging audience. Thank you, CII, for setting this up. And thank you to a lovely panel that we had here. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Let's hear it louder for them, ladies and gentlemen. May I request Mr. Lohit Bhatia to kindly do the honors and a token of appreciation for all our panelists. Please hand these over. Take it off. Take it off. This is a collection of ODOP gifts, the one district, one product gifts, which have been sourced from artisans by the Government of India, DPIIT, and this is being gifted to each of our panelists today. Can I request Ms. Nicole to hand over a gift to Lohit Bhatia as well? Thank you very much. I'd like to request each one of you in the hall to kindly vacate this hall, take all your bags, papers, everything that you have with you. There's going to be a security check because our inaugural session, which begins at 6:30, we have many ministers coming, and so a security check is very, very essential. Thank you very much. Please vacate the hall, all of you, and cooperate with the security check.
Cii Partnership Summit has been driving India's global engagement. In 2023, as CII meets B20 India, the Partnership Summit will converge government and business leaders of the world and India. With the theme of partnerships for responsible, accelerating, sustainable, and